The book is full of a lot of the things that I love, and traveling is one of them. So, Sid Carr lives in a fictional town on the Florida Gulf Coast, a name called Lola, Florida, and I'm originally from Chicago, but I've lived in Florida for over 30 years, Fort Lauderdale, now St. Augustine. I've never lived on the Gulf Coast, but there's a little town there called Apalachicola that I modeled Lola after. So Sid, has a lot of me in her, but she has a lot of things that are not at all me. Like she's not very adventurous. She's very content to be living in a small town. She works at her best friend's restaurant. She's married, but her kids are grown. So she's empty nesting for the first time. And she's very content and very happy. And all of a sudden, as you know, life will turn on a dime. Something happens and shocks her, and she's just sort of catapulted out of this comfort zone of hers. And hurricanes are a big part of life in Florida. So, and it's a great metaphor for something, coming at you that you have no control over. You just have to do the best you can. So, she does receive an inheritance, and it sets her out across the country to learn about this inheritance, and she has to do it quickly because of a hurricane. So the adventure begins then. She ends up in Sedona and then on to the Grand Canyon. And in the process, she has learned about this family secret. And so her whole world is suddenly turned upside down. Her future has been demolished because this occurrence that she's just been through, the life that she thought she was going to live is no longer what's going to happen. And then her past is completely disrupted because she's learning things about the people she was closest to, that it turns out to be not at all what she thought. And I've always kind of said, well, what do we really know about people? We think we know people, but do we really? And so the book kind of explores that, like, how do we kind of be at peace with the people that we love the most in our life, because they do disappoint us, we do suffer losses, but I think we all have to be forgiving. And none of us certainly are perfect, so Sid has to deal with these sort of deceptions and at the same time figure out how she's going to rise above it. And so the last third of the book is her hiking the Grand Canyon, which I've done. And it was a life-changing experience for me, and it's a life-changing experience for Sid. So one of the funnest, and I would say maybe most difficult parts of writing was describing that experience without sounding just totally hokey, but it really was a spiritual experience for me, and I think it is for a lot of people, the Grand Canyon and just nature. I mean, I'm a big nature lover, and getting out into the quiet of forests or mountains, and in the case of the Grand Canyon, just the night sky. The setting plays a big role in the book, and certainly the Grand Canyon is a big part of it. The book I ended up with, is not really the book I started writing. It took a lot of twists and turns over the years that I was writing it. And that part of the book came very late. The part of the story where Sid learns about her husband's infidelity. I knew that there was going to be a storyline there, but the actual setup, which I can't talk about because that would be a spoiler, but she learns, that part where she does learn about her husband's infidelity came to me late in the writing process. And it was one of those things that a lot of my experience with the writing, you don't really know where it comes from. All of a sudden, it just hit me, oh, that's what's going to happen. Some things I know where they came from, like just little memories that are stored away, made their way into the book. But that scene, that's sort of the kicker in the beginning of the book, I really don't know where that came from. It's divinely inspired, I guess. Breakups don't happen usually, a clean cut. There's usually a process of acceptance. And I I have been married and divorced, and I've under very different circumstances, but I know that feeling of wanting to hang on to something precious. And that's Sid's first reaction. She's very torn. Um, and she's a forgiving person, and she knows, none of us is perfect. And so she vacillates about what she's going to do. And part of the hurricane being in the background is a reason for her to leave with her husband on this road trip initially, because she's wants to try to save her marriage. She takes her vows seriously. She's Catholic. She has a Catholic upbringing, and the story goes into that a little bit, how that's evolved over her lifetime. But she doesn't just, you know, throw her husband to the curb. She tries to make it work. And so I did put them in a tight space. They're in a car together, and there's not a lot of escaping each other under those circumstances. And so again, the metaphor of the hurricane coming closer, and them, getting into this storm just between the two of them. And then what's going to happen? Is the town going to get demolished? Is their marriage going to get demolished? I had fun with that, but it was also very realistic about the back and forth of accepting a breakup, especially after a long-term relationship. The aunt character is based on an aunt of mine, someone who I really admired and loved. That part of the story is completely fictional, but the character was very real to me, as was the father character. But so we go to Sedona, again, another place I really love. And you mentioned yoga. I've been a yoga teacher for decades. It's a very big part of my life, not just for my physical health, but for my sanity. I practice daily. I've taught yoga. So there was no way that wasn't coming into the book. And if you know anything about the Sedona Red Rocks, there's energy vortexes there, and I've been there and I've experienced that. And so I wanted to Sid, that's sort of the beginning of her healing process, is when she arrives in Sedona and takes in that energy. And then there's another catalyst then that sends her down the road to the Grand Canyon. But that part of the book, when she then starts into the canyon and meets a whole new cast of characters, um, that was really fun, because a lot of that was just pure imagination. I didn't rely so much on true characters at that point. And I just drew on my experience hiking, and I just really had fun. And I think this story, I've had readers tell me that there is kind of a shift in the story at that point, where you really go deep, literally and figuratively, as she starts this hike kind of on a total whim, which is not how most people do it. There's usually a lot of planning. Well, she's just winging it all along. From the time she finds out about her husband, it is just winging it all the way. And taking that hike is another version of that. So there's a character named Clint, and they get to be very good friends. And he's a little bit older than her. And he's, all the characters are kind of a melding of people in my life. So, I could name 3 people probably that are in Clint. But as you write fiction, I found that and as you read it too, these characters come to life, and they became more and more real as I wrote, and they really do kind of guide you. But I just fell in love with Clint and their friendship, and it really, a big part of the I don't know, the love I poured into their relationship. It is a friendship, but I have great male friends in my life, and they're different than female friendships, and they're very valuable to me. And so that's who Clint is to Sid. And she has 2 really great male friends: Nick, from Lola, who's a childhood friend, and then Clint becomes a new friend, and they help each other. They're both in the canyon trying to recover from a deep loss. And, Sid, without giving too much away, Sid, there's a lot of things revealed, obviously, in the course of the story about her childhood, and these things come up, and then she learns that Clint's also dealing with some really painful things from his past, and together they help each other. And I think that's one of, you know my friendships. I don't know how I would have gotten this far in life without my dear friends. And so that's really what the characters in the canyon are about. Younger people. She meets an older couple with a long marriage while she's down there, that makes her feel very sad about the loss of her marriage, but it's also a hopeful little part of the story that, you can have lasting relationships, and those are work too. I mean, it's friendships, marriages, just relationships in general are work. And some of them are worth the hard work, and then some of them you realize maybe they're not worth it. And so Sid is going through all of that as she hikes, and I think we all go through that in life. I wanted it to be really relatable. You asked who Sid is. I think she will be, and people have told me she is very relatable to a wide range of people, women primarily, but from age 30 to age whatever, all the way up. I think people can find a little bit of themselves in Sid.